Recognized as one of the world's leaders in the field of mind-body medicine, Dr. Deepak Chopra continues to transform our understanding of the meaning of health. Let's take notes. He's a prolific author of self-help books and an internationally recognized leader in the field of mind-body medicine who has helped bring the enormous benefits of holistic medicine to the general public's attention. We'll talk with Deepak Chopra, an international lecturer and founder of the Chopra Center for Wellbeing in La Jolla, California. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're an endocrinologist by training and the former chief of staff at Boston Regional Medical Center. What prompted you to expand your view of conventional medicine to embrace complementary medicine from around the world?
Let's say I was fed up of being a legalized drug pusher. I used to tell my patients that if you could change a few things about your life, perhaps make you lose some weight and stop smoking and give up excessive alcohol, improve your relationships, perhaps you wouldn't need these pills. And they would say, my mother-in-law says the same thing, but she doesn't charge me $50. How do I do it? And I realized that even though we know all the things in our current medical framework of what are the origins of disease, we don't have a way of inspiring our patients or motivating them to bring about effective change. We do it through fear. If you don't stop smoking, you'll get cancer or a heart attack. If you don't reduce your cholesterol, you might get a stroke, etc. And right now, there's some data that's emerging that fear-motivated behavioral change is actually quite bad for you. There's a study from Sweden that took a group of people with risk factors for heart disease and made them change their lifestyle. So they stopped smoking, they lost weight, they reduced their cholesterol, and they died even faster because the whole motivation for changing was based on fear. So I realized a long time ago that if you really want to bring about effective change, it has to be internal. It has to be not just motivation, it has to be inspired. It has to come from a place which seeks a higher level of awareness. It has to be joyful. It has to be exhilarating. And we don't have a model for that in our science.
You say that our bodies are our experiences transformed into physical expression. In other words, we are not only what we eat, but also what we think and what we experience. And as you said, what it seems to point to is that we should reduce stress in our lives and learn to live more joyfully. But that's easier said than done. So how do you motivate people to make the changes for the right reasons?
First of all, you're right. Our bodies are experiences metabolized. We metabolize it just like you metabolize sugar or any item of food. You metabolize experience through your five senses. So that if you have an unhappy experience, you literally metabolize it into an unhappy molecule. There's a Buddhist saying, if you want to know what your experiences were like in the past, then you can examine your body right now. If you want to know what your body will look like in the future, then you can examine your experiences right now. So what's an experience? An experience is what happens to us every day: eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, the world of sensory experience, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, and then an inner world that no one has access to: thought, feeling, emotion, desire, memories, instincts, drives, likes, dislikes, beliefs, prejudices, etc. And so how do you bring about a transformation in this whole complex of mind, body, consciousness continuum, if you will? You can only bring it about if you restore in a person the experience of wonder and innocence and joy and a sense of the miracle of existence itself. The very fact that we exist is a perpetual surprise, and most of our world right now has a jaded, very constricted view of reality. So ultimately, healing is not a mental experience. It's not a physical experience, it's a spiritual experience.
You talk about spirit, and you say that spirit, although abstract, is real. It's as real as gravity. And I think most of us have a desire to be more spiritual, and we're not always sure how to do it.
I think that's because most of us spend our entire lifetime with our environment and with other people, and we don't spend any time with ourselves. If I asked you, would you live with the first stranger you met on the street, you'd probably say no, hopefully. But most people do live with a stranger, and the stranger is themselves. So, you know, the ability to sit down, close your eyes, and do nothing is an extraordinary ability. We are told that thinking is an extraordinary ability. It is, but the ability to not think is even more extraordinary. And
you're talking about meditation, really?
I am, yes.
You said what gives people meaning ultimately is knowing who they really are. How do we find, and I keep coming back to this, how do we find our true selves? You talk about the need for passion in our lives, the need to serve others, the need to express our unique talents, and that when you are expressing your unique talents, you lose track of time. But how do you find your true self?
Sometime or another, everyone has experienced what the great transpersonal psychologist Abraham Maslow called a peak experience. Perhaps we were children and we were playing and we experienced it. Perhaps we were in love for the first time and we experienced it. Perhaps we were wonderstruck by the beauty of something magnificent in nature. If you can recall that peak experience, you'll recognize that it's a state of pure innocence. It's a state where the experiencer and the object of experience become one. It's the experience of love, actually. And being in love is a very spiritual state, therefore. When people first fall in love, they experience confusion, which is the first step in spirituality. They experience wonder, they're exposed, they're transforming, they're detached from that which is trivial and mundane. They're spontaneous, they're vulnerable, and they're carefree. That's spirituality.
You talk about this mind, body, spirit connection, and I'm wondering, what awakened your own recognition of that connection, of your own spirituality?
Well, I've tried to think about this, and I remember when I was about 6 years of age, I was living with my grandfather, and my father was in England at that time. And one day we got a telegram from England saying that my father had just been selected to be a member of the Royal College of Physicians, which was a big deal in those days. So my grandfather took us to the movies. I remember the movie. It was Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. He took us out for dinner and a circus after that. We came home, had another party, and then in the middle of the night he died. And I couldn't figure out where he had disappeared. Somebody that I was so intimate with and having all this fun with, and the next day he was cremated and they threw the ashes into the river, and so poof, he was gone like a puff of smoke. And I think I must have started thinking about this at that time.
And it could have had an opposite reaction. You could have had an opposite reaction to that episode in your life. Yeah. It's a choice. It's about choosing in a way, too, it seems to me.
Yeah, I think all of us as children ask these questions. Where did I come from? What am I doing here? What's the meaning of my existence? Is there purpose? What happens to me after I die? Does God exist? And if she does she care about me? And most of us shut this out because, you know, our parents and our culture says it's not important.
You said she. My son says she, which I think is so interesting. My 6-year-old always refers to God as she, and I said to him one day, most people refer to God as he.
Well, I think the only reason I say she right now is to make people recognize that God is not necessarily a dead white male in the sky.
Esquire magazine named you one of the top 10 motivational speakers in the country. Why do you think you have been so successful at what you've dedicated the last several decades of your life doing?
Why have I?
Why?
I think it's my Indian accent. I don't know. And I don't like the word motivation, because I don't motivate people. I try to make them understand, and I try and give them insight. I try and maybe even inspire them, but I don't try and motivate them.
You've written 25 books, 100 or so, you have 100 or so audio and video, visual tapes and CD-ROMs, and you've taught about everything from ideal weight to spirituality, but I think something that is especially interesting to people is your work on aging, and you say that the effects of aging are largely preventable, that we think that the diseases associated with aging are natural, and that couldn't be more farther from the truth.
It's important to understand that. You know, if you took 100 people, say elderly people, 80s and 90s, not everyone would have heart disease. So there are a few people who are 80, 90, and they don't have heart disease. Not everyone has cancer. Not everyone has arthritis, which should make you question, are these components of these diseases components of old age? Or perhaps they're more frequent in old age, that there are precipitating factors in old age that give rise to these diseases, but they're not necessarily an expression of aging itself. Now, as you begin to look at the whole phenomenon of aging through history, in the Roman Empire, the average age of a human being was 28 years. In the early part of our century, the average age of a human being was 49 years. Today, the fastest growing segment of the American population is over the age of 90, the fastest growing segment. The way to understand aging is to look at certain biological expressions of aging. So you look at things like bone density, body temperature regulation, blood pressure, the fat content in the body, aerobic capacity, cholesterol, HDL ratios, muscle mass, the strength of muscles, sugar metabolism, sex hormones, sensory perception, cognition. If you look at these biomarkers of aging in human beings, you'll find that they're extremely flexible. So flexible that actually they're even reversible. There's a study that was done at Tufts University that looked at precisely the biomarkers I've just mentioned, introduced certain interventions, including physical exercise, and the subjects were between the ages of 84 and 96. At the end of the intervention and the study, every single person that was studied had reversed their biological markers by several decades. So human aging is reversible.
And on that note, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being with us. We've been speaking with Dr. Deepak Chopra. For Take Note, I'm Patty Satalia.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.